The Global Latin Factor Podcast.
Before we start, though, I do want to give a big shout out going out. As the recording of this episode, Brandon Moreno from Tijuana, Mexicano, has become the first UFC champion, Mexico-born champion. So big shout out going out to Brandon Moreno being the first born Mexican UFC, that's MMA, champion. He's a flyweight champion, so big congratulations to him. Felicidades, Brandon Moreno, primer campeón mexicano de la UFC en artes marciales mixtas. Y the first Mexican-American that was a champion was heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez. All these Latinos are going to get their own episode, but before we start, again, as a recording of this episode, it's Sunday, it just happened, so I just want to make sure I give them a shout out. That's awesome. I don't know, for whatever reason, even though I'm mostly vegan, eat vegan, and you're supposed to be all peace and zen and all this, but I enjoy boxing and I enjoy MMA for whatever reason. I don't know. It's something about combat one-on-one. I don't know if it's the military background or whatever, but I don't know. I enjoyed watching the competition. It's pretty cool. And yeah, I think it's awesome. One thing I don't think is so awesome is because it's okay. So we're going to talk about guns before we get to our first Latina. We're going to be so this episode, we're going to talk about a Latina. First one is, and, being something that you thought you would never become, not to mention that your parents or mostly your father were against. Another part of this capítulo is going to include a Latino that started off just wanted to buy his mom a house. And then another part of our episodio or capítulo is a Latino that almost got kidnapped. Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about that on this episode. But first, I want to talk about something, and I don't want to make it political or anything. I just want to talk about my personal experience, personal opinion with guns, firearms. Okay, so we live here in the United States. Seems that we have issues with how to handle guns, and everybody has their own opinion about, well, it's in the Constitution, Second Amendment, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we get all that. But I just want to talk about the responsibility of the gun, because I think it's very important, and it's something that can help Latino families, especially. I know we enjoy our guns as Latinos, so again, I think I already told you a million one times that I'm ex-military or whatever. It's part of my life, so it's kind of hard not for me to say something about it. However, I've pretty much shot every kind of weapon that you can think of, from a howitzer, which is a cannon, to a 50 caliber automatic weapon, to a Mark 19, which is a automatic grenade launcher, to a 203 M203 M16, which is a grenade launcher, to a Saul, to a 40. I forget the other one. Anyways, a lot of guns. I've shot every kind of gun there is. Surprisingly, nowadays I don't have guns anymore, and that's because I know that with having a gun comes a big responsibility. I'm going to give you a quick test that I gave Carlos over here that he failed miserably. What is the number one rule? Right now, if you're listening, answer yourself in your head this question. And if you can answer correctly, most likely you're ready to own a gun. If you don't, most likely you need a little bit more education, because it's all about education. Like I told you before, just because you know, that doesn't mean anything. Knowledge is not power. It's what you do with the knowledge that takes you the next step. So, what is the number one rule of owning a gun? Can you answer that? Okay. All right, let me tell you what it is. It's treat the gun as if it's always loaded. Treat the gun as if it's always loaded. So if you think about that basic principle, then every decision that you make with the gun, it will be responsible. Why? Because you wouldn't be one. Carlos said, don't point it at people. Okay, well, it comes with the same principle. Treat it as if we would be loaded. Why would you want to load a gun at somebody, Or my engineer was talking about how a kid, unfortunately, the gun went off and killed another kid. Well, if the parents were to treat the gun to see if it would load it, they would never leave it at the kid's range so that they could grab the gun and, unfortunately get their hands on the gun and accidentally go off. You know what I mean? So that's the number one rule to think about. If you are going to own a gun, you have to have responsibilities for the gun itself. You can own 1 billion guns as long as you treat it correctly in the way it is supposed to be handed. There's a big responsibility that comes with it. I'm all for the Second Amendment as long as you know how to handle it, have education for, and know that you just got to treat it like it's loaded, and there is a responsibility. Another thing that you have to think about if you own a gun is that the conversation. See, a lot of people don't have this conversation, and you got to understand the reason why I don't have a gun anymore, because I know that if I have a gun, it's because I'm going to use it. That is it, whether it's to defend myself or whatever the case might be. And that entails maybe having to take somebody's life. Now, are you willing to have that conversation with you? Besides the fact that it's for protection, besides the fact it's kind of cool to own one, is the fact that are you ready to take another human's life, another brother, another father, another cousin, another mother, daughter? Are you ready for that? So if you're not ready for that, then maybe the guns is not for you, And then, so here's a funny story. Everybody up in arms about the Second Amendment. We got to protect yourself from the government, blah, 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 blah. I used to, my job was a cannoneer. I used to shoot a howitzer, which is a cannon. And we trained to shoot, and it's not like the movies where you can see who you're shooting, right? We practice to shoot miles away, and we didn't know what was being destroyed, Luckily, I didn't participate in real life missions, but the missions that we did that were training, we never shot. One time they took us to see the mess that we made, but for the most part, if we were in a real life situation, we would never see what was being destroyed on the other side, miles away, and that was years ago. Now you think about the government has Tomahawk missiles, all kinds of crazy stuff that if you think that you're gonna take over the government or take down the government with your AK, with your automatic weapons, bro, if they wanted you to be gone, you'll be gone. There will not even a cell, not even like that. That's small. You'll be like a stain on the ground, if even that, with the kind of missiles that they have nowadays. You know what I mean? So it's dumb to think that you're gonna either defend or whatever, this and that, because if they wanted to, honestly, it would be a done deal. We wouldn't really. There would be no competition if it was up to not even just the U.S., but any other government. We seem to be here in the U.S. the only ones that have, well, not the only ones, but have a bigger problem with guns. Or maybe because it's more in the media than everywhere else in the world. I don't know how everywhere else in the world is. I believe England, they don't even have guns. And I believe Switzerland, they're required 2 years of military training. I think it's something that we need to have here in the U.S. That's just my opinion, because it would help you to, learn more discipline, learn about the gun, first of all. When I was in basic training, they didn't even allow us to touch a real gun forever and a day. We had class after class after class. They gave us a dummy gun, a rubber gun, before we even got to touch a real gun for a long time. And let yourself not point your gun at one of your battle buddies, one of your military fellas, because you'll be probably clotheslined by one of the drill sergeants for not treating the gun unless it was always loaded. And constantly doing that gave me an appreciation for the gun, a respect for the gun, and all that. And it took, basic training is usually nine weeks, and usually we spend maybe a little bit longer on weapons training. And then to actually go to the range and actually shoot a real live gun, it takes a long time for us to do that. So to think that you all of a sudden, just because you've been playing with toy guns all your life since you were a kid, to watching Call of Duty or this and that, to think that all of a sudden that has you prepared to, you're not ready at all whatsoever. You're really not. And that's the problem that I feel that we have here in the States or wherever you're at. It's just the fact that you're not giving it the respect that it needs to. It comes with responsibility to owning that. Not to mention, just it comes with the fact that you have to treat it like it's always loaded. And I can guarantee you, and I know I'm pretty sure I'm just talking about it, the same points that a lot of people talk to, but that's just the reality. You can have, as I mentioned, I'm not anti-gun. Please have your guns all day long, every day. But there's a reason why we're having issues. And I'm speaking here and on the podcast based on the United States and what we have. But it's just the fact that there's an issue. And it's just the fact that people are losing lives that is like senseless whatsoever. Like senseless. No need to lose somebody's life over your stupidity. And not to mention now, let's say, I don't want to laugh. Sometimes I just feel like it's like a mechanism for me to just laugh because it's just so freaking crazy to me that it doesn't make sense to people. But let's say you have an incident with a gun, accidentally goes off, and you take somebody's life. Not to mention you already took somebody's life, not your life. You'll probably go either involuntary manslaughter, 5 years maybe, or longer. It depends. And you'll lose your freedom, homie, just like that. Or ladies, whichever the case might be, because it goes for both, not just men, but women themselves. Because I know that women do own more guns nowadays than ever before. It's the same thing for you. Treat it like if it was always loaded, and I guarantee you that you'll have less of an issue. My problem has never been with the guns. My problem is the fact that you do not respect the guns the way they need to be respected, and the fact that you can't answer a simple question that you don't know how to, like, the number one rule to treat a gun, then again, I'm sorry, you're not ready for it. There's educational videos. There's YouTube. You don't want to pay. There's people that constantly doing YouTube videos about how to treat a gun properly and this and that, you know. So the education is there. Again, knowledge is not power. It's what you do with it. Go find some more. And then when you're ready for it, then, hey, more power to you, please. I'm all for people owning guns as long as they're responsible. And I get real weird when people are around me that don't know how to operate a gun, and I just know they're not because I just rather not be around. What for? I don't want to be a statistic or some dummy that didn't know how to handle a gun in my life, like just like that. I don't think so. Like, nope. Yeah, y'all can stay over there, play with it. I'm gone. See ya. Yep, that's not my thing. So anyways, enough with the guns. Again, all for the guns, but please respect the gun. And I know I said it a couple of times, but respect it, respect it, respect it. And have the conversation with yourself if you're willing to be okay with taking somebody's life, because that's the only reason why you will want to own a gun. Yep. All right, moving on to our next Latino Global Latin Factor. So this time we're moving into more violence, boxing. I'm kidding. So last time we had the homie Emmanuel. Manny came in, talked to us a little bit about boxing. But I did want to talk about these boxers because, I just, for whatever reason, it's in a lot of Latino culture, for my experience and for what I've lived, we're usually cheering for, unless you're here in Texas, right? If you're here in Texas, mostly you're like baseball and football. So I think you feel like you embrace more sports if you're here in Texas. But anywhere else, pretty much like Cali or things like that. I think soccer and boxing are mostly the main sports that you really, really like cheer for the most, buy the most pay-per-views, have the most gatherings for families to watch things like that. And it's the same thing for me growing up, watching Julio Cesar Chavez, watching Oscar de la Hoya, and all these great fighters back in the days. Even to this day, watching like Canelo and things like that. All these individuals, it's just something that we enjoy. So I think it's a Latino. And then, there's been a great Puerto Rican boxers, from all types of Latino backgrounds. There's been great ones. And one of the ones that we're going to talk today is Marlene Esparza. So Marlene Esparza was born in July 29, 1989. And she's a professional boxer. She's a first-generation Mexican. She was doing an interview, and she thought it was crazy to her that she was first-generation Mexican. I'm like that's kind of crazy to me. So yeah, so her parents were born in Mexico. She was born here. She challenged for the WBM interim female flyweight title in 2019, and she became the first American woman to qualify for the Olympics in the first year that the women's boxing was an Olympic event. So, as I mentioned before, it's crazy to me that boxing's been around for so long that just barely it actually became an Olympic sport. That's like wow to me, because I know there's been female boxing for a long time, and I just thought by default, not looking into it, it was like, okay, so it's probably a box, but no, there wasn't a boxing until very recently, and she won a bronze medal in the women's flyweight division in the 2012 in London Olympics. Her stance is orthodox, and I watched a bunch of interviews about her and things like that, and she was saying that her dad, like typical Mexicano, and again, I'm not stereotyping, it's usually how we operate as far as Mexicanos, is that he didn't want her to be boxing. She had two other brothers, and her dad wanted them to box, so they'll go to the gym, she'll tag along. And then eventually the older brother, he's like, nah, I'm not feeling this. I'm not going to box. So he just let it go. So it was just the younger brother and her. And she convinced her dad to say, like, I can take him. I'll just babysit him. Like, okay. So she'll go and take her little brother to the gym, but then she'll be training too. And then eventually, she convinced her dad enough to let her stay and continue boxing. So she said a funny story. So her first coach, and I didn't get his name, but his first coach said that there was like an A team and there was a B team, and she'll be in the B team, and she's like, I want to be on the A team or something like that, like the number one team. And he's like, no, you're not ready for that. Like, and then she'll keep insisting, like, I want to be on the A team. Like, no, you're not. I want to be on this. And like, finally, he gave way. He's like, okay, we're going to let you go ahead and be on this team. And what the coach used to do is that he used to get the smaller guys to box her and just beat her behind over and over and over many times. And she said that at one time her coach finally came clean. He said, like, the only reason why I let you in on the A team is because I was going to bring in some smaller fighters to beat you up, and then you'll quit and then you'll just go away. But she never went away. She said after getting beat up so much, like, eventually you just gain experience, especially if you adamant and you hold on to that dream of just becoming a boxer. Like, your passion is so strong that how many beatings she probably could have taken. Like she said, after a while you get beat up so many times, it's like you just have to become good, and that's what happened to her. And that's what touches back on the quote that I mentioned to you before, like, pain is temporary. How many times she had to deal with pain? Like, probably minutes, days, hours, even longer for her to even become good, maybe even years. But eventually it subsided and something else took its place, and she just became real good. And she became real good, and, she became an Olympian. And recently she had a baby, and she got married. However, that didn't stop her. She wanted to show that a lot of society usually thinks that once you have a kid or things like, I don't know, I'm not a female, but seeing it from a men's perspective, usually I kind of things like that will run through my mind. That once you have a kid, it's pretty much, just not going to be the same. And that's the thing that she saw, and she wanted to be an inspiration for women that had kids in the boxing, that wasn't the end, that you can still continue to fight, and she continued to fight. So she did graduated from Pasadena High School in Pasadena, Texas in 2007. Again, she won bronze medal in the 2006 World's Boxing Championship, not the Olympics, and gold in the 2015 AIB Women's World Championship, and a bronze in 2016 AIBA Women's World Boxing Championship. First woman to be signed to Golden Boy Promotions. So if you know about boxing, you know about Golden Boy Promotions, one of the top promoters. She felt like it was a good fit for her. There was plenty of offers out there on the table based on the interviews that I've seen, but At that time, she felt that was her best fit. So far as to my understanding, she's still with Golden Boy Promotions, but she's still an active fighter, so you don't know where she's going to go. She's also endorsed by CoverGirl Cosmetics and also appears in Spanish language commercials for Coca-Cola. In addition, she collaborated with animal rights activist PETA, and also, speaks about publics. She does public speaking about, abuse animals. So awesome. Marlene Esparza, again, just like I told you before, this is just little bitty pieces of that hopefully spark your curiosity to go find more about these Latinos. So that there is a Latino, a female Latina, first generation Mexicana that was able to be, and like, she didn't took no for an answer. She was getting beat up in training all the time, but her passion was so in her heart that she would not take no for an answer. Even after getting beat up plenty of times, you know what? She said, I want some more. And she went and got some more. And now she currently still competing. The last fight that I saw, I believe she did lose to another Latina, which, again, we're going to probably do her as well. And it was a nasty cut in her forehead. It was bad. It was bad. And some person interviewing some ladies, like, if I was to cut like that, I'd be like, nope, take me out. I'm out. I don't want no more. And it's true. It takes a lot of, okay, so everybody, not everybody, but for the most part, people that just watch fights and things like that, everybody thinks it's so easy, right? That, do this, do that. It's just like any other sport, just like basketball, just like football. How come he couldn't do that? Like, it's so much easier said than done. But boxing, just to realize that you're going to have to get in the ring and get punched in the face by another person, even if you don't want to, it's part of boxing, right? And have the courage enough to go in there in front of all these people and, box it out. It takes some kind of special person. It's not everybody that does it. It's really not. So big shout out going out to all the boxers out there. I think there's a reason why I admire it, because a lot of the boxers do come from a rough background, and, it's crazy that they do. And we're going to go ahead and move on to our next Latino. We're going to continue the theme of the boxers. So this time we're moving all the way to Panama. We have Roberto Duran Samaniego, a.k.a. El Cholo Rocky, a.k.a. Manos de Piedra. Translations, hands of stone. That's right. Roberto Duran was born on June 16, 1951 in El Chorrillo, Panama. He's Panamanian. He's a former boxer who competed from 1968 all the way to 2001. He is also the world's championship of 4 weight classes. So 4 weight classes this gentleman fought: lightweight, welterweight, light, middleweight, and middleweight, as well as reigned as the undisputed and linear lightweight champion, also the linear welterweight champion. His mother was Clara Samaniego and was a native of Guarare, and his father was Margarito Duran Sanchez. And guess what he was from? He was from Arizona, but he was from Mexican descent. Yes. And the family, so the mom married the dad. For whatever reason, it didn't work out. The dad, he wasn't in his life anymore, so he wasn't part of it. And another fun fact about this, and this is very interesting to me because I didn't know, and I thought it was pretty cool. So he was in Rocky 2. Did you know that Roberto Duran was in Rocky 2? Do you ever watch any of the Rocky movies, Carlos? Any of them? Which one? That's it? Oh my goodness. I recommend to watch all the Rocky. They're pretty good. I like them all. Which one? Creed? You know what? That's the only one I haven't watched. Yeah, I need to watch that one. Yeah, I haven't watched Creed. If you have watched Creed, let me know what you think about that one. And he was also on Harlem Nights. Yes, he was also on that movie Harlem Nights for a little bit, a small piece of it. He has also been known to be, so he's one of the second boxers to ever compete for 5 decades and one of them being Jack Johnson. He's the first, so Duran is the second. He's also known to be so his style was more like a brawler, versatile, pressure boxer, always in your face. And then again, he got that nickname Manos de Piedra because when he hit you, man, you felt it for days. Those punches were like, man, I can only imagine. Like, if you think about getting hit by like Tyson, like even nowadays, right? Like I don't get people that want to confront like or try to like say they can beat up or whatever. That's why I don't believe. Okay, so that's why I don't believe. Okay, I understand that there's money in there. I understand that there's a market for it. But I do not believe the fact that Floyd could not knock out one of a YouTuber if he didn't want to. Meaning that I'm not trying to stir no controversy, but be honest with you. Sav Judah gave an interview not that long ago, and he said I don't know about Floyd, but I would have knocked out 2-3 times heavier man. He would knock him out with no problem. And Sav Judah and Floyd competed at the same weight class. So you know what I mean? I understand maybe there was a genuine agreement not to get taken out. I'm not saying that he didn't get in the ring and lasted, but to say that he really honestly did last the 8 rings with one of the greatest boxers, I don't believe that. Not regardless if he's known for his heavy punching or not. It's all about technique. 100% about technique. And like I said it before, if he was to get in the ring with an actual boxer, professional boxer, even if he only has a couple of professional boxing matches, I guarantee you any of those YouTubers will not last around for the simple fact that it's just technique and repetition and over. You cannot surpass that without having to do the work. That's why I don't believe it. Say what you want. If you want to buy into it and get all this and it's entertaining, that's cool. But when it comes to real boxing, even though I'm not a boxer, I've been watching it for a long, long time. And I understand that all that is technique and it's just a whole lot harder than what it is. And give them credit, that they got in the ring, actually. But to say that Floyd did not hesitate or just pardon homies because they can make more money, I'm just saying, there's no way. Ain't no way. Other boxers would tell you the same thing. Hey, but get your money. And in 2002, Duran was voted by the Ring magazine as the 5th greatest fighters of the last 80 years, while boxing historian Bert Sugar rated him as the 8th greatest fighters of all times. And the Associated Press voted him as the best lightweight of the 20th century, with many considering him the greatest lightweight. So not only they voted him to be one of the greatest, however, some consider him to be the greatest lightweight of all times. Having some water because I'm drinking a lot. Merch available. You want some? Look at this beautiful cup. You know you want one. Oh, you do have one. You use it, Carlos? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. They're very useful. You put water and stuff in coffee. Everyone knows what a cup does. They work. Just like the shirts too. Link on bio. Hey, do you get tired, Carlos? I don't know. I know it's a thing, and repetition is key. But after a while, because I don't say it like subscribe or follow. Like, subscribe, and follow. Yeah, isn't that like gets what's it called? Saturated after a while, like all the time, and I get it. It's like subscribe and follow. Please leave a comment about the cup. There you go. We'll have the link on the bio. Please support part of the podcast. We started off. We have a lot of content still to go. We honestly cannot like run out of content as far as Latinos, like everything on there. And not to mention the last interview, we have an up and coming boxer, and it was great to talk to him and just come to a mutual point that we have. Just like I told y'all before, we're just like you. We're just really not. We have our own way of doing things, but certain things and principles are just the same. We just look a little bit different. That's all. And I have all kinds of. Okay, I'll touch up on this later in a few minutes about what I think about something. It's off the wall, but I don't think it's too off the wall because there's really content about that. So I think it's a real deal. All right. So here's Mr. Roberto Duran. So he did finally retire in January 2002 at the age of 50. That's a lot of time. That's a long time boxing. And you don't know what? The only reason why he stopped fighting is because he got into an accident, a bad accident in Argentina that required life-saving surgery. So that's one of the reasons why he was done. He had previously retired back in 1980, as I mentioned, and then June in 1984 and August 1998. And so he retired multiple times over. But he's not the only one that's done it before. That supposedly that's how you created your legacy, right? That you go in and you announce your retirement, and then all of a sudden you announce you're coming back, and everybody and their mama talking about you came out of retirement. Think about everybody and their mama is doing Sugar Ray Leonard, Floyd Mayweather. How many times did he retire? Even in MMA, Conor McGregor retired a few times. You know, there's just that thing that it's like a check mark, I think, on one of the Hall of Fames. I think so. I think all the Hall of Fames have a check mark. Hey, you have to retire and come back for retirement, and then you can become one of the Hall of Fame. So if you don't do that, I mean, and it does create a bigger buzz because then it gives everybody, all the outlets that cover the sport, all of a sudden, oh my God, that's coming out of retirement and this and that. And then, of course, you go on to win because you're good like that. And then that's what it is. So Duran ended his career with a professional record of, check this out, 119 fights, 103 wins, 70 knockouts. 70 knockouts. From May 1971 until he ended until his second fight with Sugar Ray Leonard in November 1980, as well as the fight against Wilfredo Benitez in January 1982. Duran was trained by legendary trainer Ray Arcel. You know, to be honest, I really didn't look too much into Ray Arcel, but I am gonna cover him if he's Latino, if I'm not mistaken. It sounds like it is, but I will look into him to see if he is or not. Yep. So there you have it. There's Mr. Roberto Duran Samaniego, a.k.a. Manos de Piedra. And I know a cover that he has. He made a cameo on a few movies. However, there's movies about his life if you want to know more. So, yeah. And did you know that the man was he was a salsa singer? Yes, Mr. Duran was a salsa singer. And his orchestra was named Felicidad, named after his wife. And they recorded an album and frequently were on shows, television shows in Latin America. So, not only a boxer, an actor, but also a salsa singer. How about that? Did you know that? I know you didn't know that. You're only going to get this kind of content right here at the Global Latin Factor with a functional cup. Just saying. All right. Okay, check it out. So this one's a little bit, again, not too much into the conspiracy, but I think it is. But I think it's not. For the same reason that there's people that believe in this. There's people that look into this. There's people that like really know that things like that work. And what I'm talking about is that, do you believe that previous ancestors' traumas get transferred over to you via your DNA? What do you think, Carlos? You don't think so? Okay, so what is DNA? It's information, right? Okay. So information gets carried over from, and we don't really understand how DNA works technically, right? So there's a lot of, especially in the indigenous community, I don't want to, I understand that y'all use different wording. Native Americans or indigenous people here in the Americas. Technically, I think I don't know how indigenous I am. I'm pretty sure I do. I mean, it's only obvious. You can see by my features, right? Or even a little bit of Asian. What is he? Is he Asian? Is he Mexican? Is he from the islands? I've been told that. From Guam. This one coworker of mine one time thought that I was from Guam. What am I? I was born in Mexico. I don't know where else I'm from there. But it makes sense to me that the native indigenous people do believe this, that there is certain things that you just get carried over through your DNA, and they have to be worked out. There's even meditations that they have that you work through and go back through your line up your parents and go and just do this, forgiveness, and not only forgiveness, but this letting them know that it's okay for what they went through and things like that. And it does make sense to me that does happen, that certain traumas do get carried over. Not only the traumas, but the good things. But for whatever reason, the negative things like they seem to be more attached to certain things that carry over, right? Like I think maybe alcoholism is one of them. It's not necessarily genetic, but it is something that is a trauma. For whatever reason, one of your ancestors before had a weird relationship with money, Okay, so here's an example of mine. Okay, so one time I was having a conversation with somebody here in Fishbowl, and we were talking about the Spaniards, and I was, for whatever reason, I didn't become angry, but I became I felt a little strange because just recalling all the things that my ancestors had to go through, right? From the Spaniards getting to the Americas to, killing so many people for bringing their own diseases, to so much gold that was here in Mexico, not here in Mexico, but in Mexico, and having to take all that gold and then taking some of the women and raping some of the women, and all the pain that they inflicted, that it makes you mad at times. Like, at least for me at that moment when I was having the conversation with this person, like towards the Spaniards. I don't know them. I've been there. It's cool. I mean, I don't mind it. But for whatever reason at that moment, I felt like, and what does it come from? I didn't go through none of that. I didn't feel nothing. But there was this real sense of anger for whatever reason that I should be mad at them because they took all that, Give me back my gold. Give me back my land. Give me back the way that we were before, And it was a little strange to me, but then now when I recall, and for whatever reason this topic came up for me, it's like it kind of I don't know, maybe if first of all, we don't understand a lot about DNA. There's cloning. I don't care what you say. There is cloning. Countries are cloning people. I don't know if the U.S. or not is doing it, but I guarantee you, all of a sudden they clone the sheep, and all of a sudden there's no more talk about the cloning sheep. It just died off. Come on. That sheep didn't just disappear and go away. Why did they start cloning after that? And what we were talking about earlier with Sammy and a lady Billy here, that previously before certain things were suppressed for a long time, and then just recently they started coming into the light, whether it's like herbs and different things that cured us. For a long time, they were suppressed by people that had money because they didn't want that to be out. But now that, information flows more with the internet, all of a sudden those things are coming up. So you can't tell me that there's no cloning. That's another conspiracy for you. But I feel like no way that after they cloned this sheep, all of a sudden it just stopped. Like, okay, we did it. High five. We're done. Anyways, so we don't understand a lot about DNA. And because of that, I feel like there is some truth behind it. And that's the reason why a lot of the times, even the greatest, Santana, even different people that we talked about, they always talk about going inside for the same reason. What is it that you find when you go in your inner head and you start thinking, whether you're communicating with God and actually have a good conversation with him, whether it's to see different things that happen to you that you need to go back and touch when you were little, or even further now that again, do your own research. I feel like there's a little bit of truth on it. I don't think it's so much of a conspiracy, that there is something, because DNA is information and we don't really understand, and a lot of traits get carried over, and it's not too far-fetched that some of the traits that your traumas, your abuses, your misunderstanding with money, all those can be carried over. All of a sudden, some of your relatives, before you know it, you kind of sort of feel that same way. You don't know where it came from, but you can't get rid of it unless you really get in touch with those things and start doing some meditations and things like that to get rid of it. I'm a firm believer in meditation. I don't know about you. Have you ever meditated, Carlos? Ken, have you ever meditated? You believe in meditation?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah? What do you feel like whenever you finish meditating?
Feel good, like relaxed.
Doesn't it feel a lot better whenever you even take like even 5 minutes of just literally sitting there with no interruption whatsoever? I don't know. There's something, and then even if you are religious, within meditating, after you read a passage and you meditate on it, then it gives it a different feeling, So I think it's a good thing to do, and for everybody to just minimum take a few minutes. Your life cannot be too busy that you cannot allow yourself for you 10, 15, 20 minutes of your time, in whether it's in the morning time or before you go to bed, to allow yourself to do that for you and to benefit you and to help you calm your thoughts, everything. And there's a meditation. There's a lot of meditations that you can do, either guided meditations on YouTube or just sit there and don't try the best to quiet your. Okay, so here's a real quick tip for meditating. Okay, so you find a quiet place, you cross your legs, you put your hands facing up just like this, and you just sit there a little bit, your head angle just a little bit upwards, and you just sit there. And then the way that it's supposed to be is like you just sit there and just breathe. You don't have to exaggerate. There's different kind of meditation where you deeply breathe and things like that. But all you got to do is just sit there, realize that you're breathing. You start getting thoughts about different things. You realize that there's a thought coming in. You acknowledge the thought, and you dismiss it, and you continue to go back. So it's like a rep, right? So that's one rep. You maintain your breathing. All of a sudden, you had a thought. You dismiss it, and then you continue. And eventually, you can probably start out with 5 minutes, and then you go to 10, and then like that. And then eventually those thoughts that are coming up that you acknowledge that they're coming, you dismiss them. And then later on, before you know it, you'll have longer spans of not having a thought, because we don't want to stop thoughts, right? You're talking about thousands of years of evolution for us to have these thoughts. All of a sudden, we just want to quiet them or whatsoever, Sometimes you want to acknowledge what's going on with that thought. What is it? What is it? Is it something that you just feel like you're in live, you need to work, you need to do? And then, you entertain the thought to realize maybe there's something that beneficial you need to look into. Or if not, just dismiss it. If senseless thought, just let it go. It's just a thought, literally. And then you realize that thought is not you, and then go on and just keep doing it. And eventually you'll grow from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 to where you can just probably meditate for a longer time, And then it's time for you. Is your time. I'm all for me time, I'm all for enjoying yourself for you, for whatever you want to do. Because at the end of the day, who are you really living for, Who are you really living for? We'll touch up on that at another time. All right. Moving on to the next Latino. We're still sticking to boxing. We're going to talk about somebody that's right now is at his prime. And most likely he's going to have a whole lot more. And we're most likely going to do a follow-up later on, probably years from now. My working cup again. We're talking about Santos Saul Canelo Alvarez Barragan. You know what that is? Canelo. That's right. Mr. Canelo Alvarez, better known. He was born on July 18, 1990. As a Mexican professional boxer. His father's name is Santos Alvarez, and mother's name is Ana Maria Barragan. So I don't know if you realize, right? So that's how we Mexicans operate as far as last names. So you take your dad's first last name, and then your mom's other name, and that's how you get both of your last names. That's how we work. So his is Alvarez Barragan because his dad's Alvarez, his mom's Barragan. Just a quick little why do you if you never knew why we have so many last names Latinos, that's the reason why. we give each other both or the last names. And if it's rare that a Mexicano has, well, not really rare, maybe in my family, but a lot of the times we don't have middle names. Do you have a middle name, Carlos? What is it? I bet I can find out. I'm gonna look at your LinkedIn. I'm gonna find you on LinkedIn. Watch. Anyways, I'm gonna find your last name. It's a mission of mine. And he was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. Okay, so I touched up on this story last time. So his family worked in the business of paletas, which is like a popsicle stick, which is ice cream, right? And they make paletas. And when he was 5 years old, Canelo used to take lunch to so his mom was a stay-home mom because they had a lot of kids. I believe they had 7 kids. So the mom, didn't. All she could do is raise the kids, and Canelo had to take lunch to his dad one time, and well, I don't know if it was one time, but probably a lot of the times. So one time he was going in the bus or whatever ride or combi or whatever it is, and he noticed this lady was following him. So he's like, "What? Like, what's going on here?" And then he ran into one of his older brothers, like, "Hey, I think this lady is following me." And like, "What?" Like, "Yeah, I think she's following me." He's like, "Run!" And told Canelo to run. And then his brother got on the way, tried to stop the lady. The lady tried to grab Canelo, and then the brother tried to fight her off. The lady bit Canelo's brother, tried to get him away. And then Canelo finally got to the shop, and they told, Dad, they're trying to kidnap me. And the dad like, "What?" And so they had to call the cops. The lady kept insisting, "That's my kid." They stole the kid from the U.S. because, of course, he was redheaded and light-skinned. He's like, "No, you stole it from him." So they had to bring the cops and sort it all out. The dad had to, show that was his kid. It wasn't, even though he looked redheaded and, lighter skinned, that he wasn't from the U.S. because you could kind of see that he would be from the U.S. A little freckled redheaded kid. He wouldn't be from Mexico. So eventually they they sorted out and showed that that was his kid. I think I feel like Canelo, because the Irish are known for those traits, the redhead and the freckles, right? So apparently there was a lot of Irish that migrated at one point to Mexico, and there was some kind of conflict, if I'm not mistaken, some kind of battle or war that happened. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, he has to have some kind of Irish blood in him. Again, and they do fight often, and they do known for boxing. I'm going to look more into it at a later time, but I feel like the Irish, he has some kind of Irish blood, European Irish blood. It's just my opinion, but I feel like it is for, his red hair, his freckles, and the fact that he knows how to box. So his older brother was the one that really inspired him to be a boxer, but his older brother knew that he was going to be bigger than he was. So his brother trained him for as long as he could, and eventually he couldn't train him anymore. He took him as far as he could, and that's when he took him to his trainer, and eventually he just started becoming better. And at the age of 15 is when he turned pro, and I was telling the story last time, is because at the amateur level he was beating at all the competition. He outworked everybody. So he had already, like, he one of his interviews that I saw recently, at 14 he knocked out a man that was either 30 to 35 years old. So at 14 years old, this young man had so much power that he was able to knock out a grown dude, a grown man, knock him out. That's wild. That's wild to me, to have that much power. And the coach, Reynoso, he realized that he had a lot of power. When he first saw him, when his brother brought him, he saw that he had the raw talent. He didn't have none of the head movement yet. He didn't know how to use his hip well, but he knew that he was like a diamond in the rough. All they needed to do is just shape this guy, like give him technique, because it's all about technique. Boxing is about technique. It's about, if you think football is a game of inches, man, boxing is just like that. One bad move, one little bitty shift and that's it, And he realized that even though he had the raw power, the raw talent already, that he needed just to be, given all the other weapons. And even at his earlier career, they already realized this man has like talent like no other as far as boxing. He has, and right now I'm giving you the updates that I saw online, but I don't know if it's current yet because eventually he had this one last fight. So I'm pretty sure he changed. He has won multiple world championships in 4 classes as well: lightweight, light heavyweight, and including the unifying 3 titles at those weight classes. And he's currently unified the super middleweight world champion and has held the WBMA Super, WBC, and Ring Magazine title since 2002, and the WBO title since May 2021. So that's the one that he recently won. So another thing that he did, so again, he knew that he had to learn the profession at an early age, which would be making paletas. But one of the funny stories that he told was that have you ever played the bug game, Carlos? The beetle game, the bugs, when you see a beetle, you punch each other like color. Yeah, okay, punch bug. So in Mexico, I didn't know about this because maybe I wasn't paying more attention or I didn't know. But in Mexico, he said that he wasn't really ashamed to go sell paletas, and he wanted to start selling when he was 5. But his dad is like, nah, you gotta wait till you're a little older. So when he was about 7 years old, that's when he started selling. But he said he wasn't like ashamed of selling the paletas. He was more embarrassed because the little kids, anytime where he was from, they saw a redheaded person, is like the punch bug. They'll punch each other or pinch each other. And he felt embarrassed because of it. That's the reason why he's like, it's not that I was embarrassed to sell. I was ashamed of what I was doing. It's just the fact that little kids kind of tease. And I think that, so he said in a lot of interviews, he used to be what they call vago, which he liked to roam the streets, and he used to fight a lot. And I think the reason why he used to fight a lot is for the same reason that he was a freckled kid and redheaded, and they moved often. He moved to different schools. So anytime he had to move to a different school, he had to start beating behinds again until, he established it. Like, I'm not the one to pick with. I mean, I might look like this, but y'all ain't about to make fun of me or pick with me. And I feel him on that. I take a butt whooping, but before I take being punked. And Canelo and I can relate to that. I'm just kidding. I ain't no fighter. I'm a lover. But yeah, I feel like he had to fight a lot. And I think that contributed to being better at fighting because he had to defend himself, looking different than everybody else, and either you get beat up and get bullied or you have to push back. And the only other way to, stop a bully is to confront him. That's the only way. That's the only other way to stop. And I'm not encouraging violence, but at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you're not getting bullied, picked on, and then you'll be able to be in peace with, just being you. And don't be embarrassed. He continues. So the crazy other things that I've seen about him is that he had a lot of things going on, even in his career as far as fighting. It seemed like there was always something coming up during his big fights. Like one of his big fights that he had, one of his brothers was kidnapped, so he had to negotiate that. So I think it was Monday, he said, when he found out about it, and on Saturday he had to fight. So he had to be on the phone. It was in Mexico, so he couldn't really count on the police because, the police could be compromised. So he had to, pretend like nothing was happening in fight week, but at the same time be on the phone trying to negotiate. And, eventually they did return his brother and he wasn't harmed. But it's just crazy to me that not a lot of us, just recently that he did an interview that he released this, but not a lot of us knew that was going on, And that got to take some mental toughness not to be broken and to go in and fight and win, because he won that fight. And another thing about him that Reynosa, one of his trainers, said is that he used to fight on Friday, and by Monday he was right back in the ring. And even though the discipline changed from then, he said that till this day, he's the same discipline. Yeah, maybe he fights Saturday, maybe by Tuesday or something like that, he's back in the ring. But he's just been so disciplined, and that's one of the reasons why he's being successful as far as what he does, and being consistent, being disciplined, staying in the ring, staying away from other things, and He used to tell one of the interviews also is like he said that he's because another thing that he went into, I think it was close to a fight. One of his brothers got accused of killing somebody, and eventually they proved that didn't happen. But he said his brother used to tell him like, "All right, we love you," or like, "You love me? Okay, well, stay away from trouble," because anytime he's a public figure, right? So anytime something happens, they're not gonna go to their brothers; they're gonna go to him, and it's like, hey, like he's responsible for them, you know. So okay, you love me, okay, well, do the right thing. Don't get yourself in trouble. Go home, you know. Stay away from being in trouble if you really love me. And yeah, so that's wild to me. So again, this is just as of today the information that we have for Canelo. And again, I know it's just a little bit of it, but I know there's gonna be more because I still feel like he's on his prime, and he probably has more. You're probably going to know more about him later on because his mindset now is, of course, he still loves boxing. He's never done it for the money. He just loves boxing. And that's the reason why he consistently just stays focused on boxing. And the other thing that he's going to become, that he says is a billionaire, and he enjoys real estate and recently golfing. So most likely he's most likely not going to be a trainer. He has no interest in training. He has no interest in commentating in boxing. He doesn't even like watching boxing. He likes to do the boxing, which is different. But he does enjoy real estate, as I mentioned, and also golf. So maybe you'll see him more celebrity golfing, or who knows? Maybe he becomes a golfer. He feels like he's really enjoying it. So, yep, this is all we have this time for Mr. As of today for Santos. That's 2021, if you're watching this at a later time. Santos Saul Canelo Alvarez Barragan, a.k.a. Canelo, El Canelito. And they actually have a corrido. I'm pretty sure they have more than one corrido. But if you're Mexicano, you like some corridos, go check out some of the corridos they have out there. And this is all we have for this episode of the Global Latin Factor podcast. Remember to follow and subscribe. Link right below. Ain't that right? That's where we're going to be at. I know I have to say it over and over. Hit the merch. You already know what it is. And remember, we're just like you. We're not more different. We're just people like you. We're just the spice in this global melting pot that it is the world. Until the next episode, this is Crispin Valentin with the Global Latin Factor podcast.